So my name is Alula from Switzerland. My father is from Ethiopia, my mother is from Japan, and I'm living here in Japan now I've been living here for 10 years. So we met through a group of common friends in a party around 5 years ago, I believe. I'm a recruiter, so I look for jobs for people and I introduce people to companies. I would say it's a good time to reflect on your future career and what you really want to do, but also to consider how the industries will change. I think it's an age where AI and technology is going to increase in volume and also in terms of skills. So maybe that's a good time to consider adding new skills and also to think about the industry that you want to work on. But it's also a time where you can apply. Some firms are still recruiting. Yeah, I grew up in Geneva. I moved to a town, when I was 5, a little bit further away from Geneva, 20 minutes away. And Switzerland has, definitely had, the strongest impact because I stayed there basically my whole life. It's a great country. You learn to be disciplined. It has taught me to work with people. It's a small country. So you want to make sure that you don't bother people. You gotta, take care of yourself first, and then if you have something to add, you can share. But this is the kind of things that I learned. It is to an extent multicultural, but at the time where I was living, it was more a small town. So there wasn't that much diversity, I would say. So this definitely has affected me. Positively and negatively, of course. And then, so that's for Switzerland. But Switzerland, Geneva is also a very international place. That's where my parents met. So I also have a deep, love and interest for Geneva. And in terms of Canada, I moved to a town called Victoria, close to Vancouver. When I was 15, I learned English over there. It's a beautiful town. I met some great people. I got some new exposure in terms of the kind of people that I would become friends with, and yeah, it has helped me grow. But it also kind of showed me, it was a time when I was 15 that I also saw the limits, my limits, the kind of things that my weaknesses, I would say, things that when you go somewhere else, when you go out of your comfort zone or out of what you kind of realize, what you're comfortable about and what you're not comfortable about. And I was able to understand that, I had some areas within myself that I need to work on. And so that's what Canada brought me, right? And then Japan was later in life. So when I was 25, I moved here 10 years ago. And Japan has been very good so far, honestly. Socially, I feel very comfortable. People are kind. I don't feel any kind of social pressure, the kind of pressure that people living in a small town could understand. I don't feel that, but that's also because there's a lot of people. But generally speaking, people are nice. Service level is excellent. So I'm very happy and comfortable here, I would say. First of all, the size is completely different, right? In Switzerland, you're talking about 8 million people, and here you're talking about 130 million people. So when you have 130 million people, it's not being managed the same way as you would manage a smaller country, right? So I think, in a sense, here rules are important, and making sure that you think about the consequences of your action to the next person is something that's embedded in the education from early on. So people are very polite, and this is something that that's actually also the case in Switzerland, because Switzerland has 4 languages in the country, so French, German, Italian, and Romanche. I don't know how to pronounce that in English. And so this is a combination of different language and kind of culture as well, that forces people to kind of find compromise, find negotiation, or to negotiate with each other, and to make sure that rules are being, enforced, When I say rules, is also customs. You know, there's you are very careful about what you say and what you do in order not to bother too much your neighbor. And that kind of carefulness, I think, can be found in both countries, actually. Okay, so I have 4 kids, and being dad in Japan, it's actually great. You know, people are kids friendly, so you don't have any kind of social pressure because you have kids. You have to be very careful what they say, or it's pretty nice in that sense. But at the same time, infrastructure, finding a babysitter, for example, might be a challenge. So this kind of things, are a bit difficult. And also in terms of education, if you want them to really succeed in school and to find a good job, there's a course that you have to follow, right? If you're going to stay into the Japanese system. And that can be very challenging. There's a lot of implicit knowledge that you need to understand in order to be able to have access to the right schools, even though it's public schools, but the school levels are different. So these kind of things, need to be are a stressful part of a parent's life, I think, in Japan. So in Switzerland, the thing is, how can I put it? So I grew up in the 1980s, right? And it was a time where, there was still communism and, capitalism fighting. And politically, there was a movement basically. But Switzerland was kind of a place where you would welcome people, especially people coming from different political background or people who have been persecuted. So, when my father came in and came to Switzerland, he met my mother. This was Geneva. And the memories I have of the 80s when I grew up was, a place where it was kind of welcoming differences and there wasn't that much discrimination or anything like that. And that's the kind of place that I still love today, to this day, right? Now, later on, I moved to a smaller town outside Geneva. And first of all, I have to say, I've never experienced racism per se, like direct racism and, being calling names or anything like that. Nor did I see my father experiencing such kind of things. However, I did feel that I was different. I did feel like, I was different. And I also felt that, in terms of opportunities for my dad, he may not have had the same opportunities as, in terms of work and career as somebody, from Switzerland, like a white person, I would say. But this was kind of implicit. It wasn't really out there, but I felt, I felt it within me. And also because, it's a time where, especially in France, you have the left and you had this SOS racism, this kind of, fighting against racism, which is good in a sense. But when you kind of use that to remind everyone all the time that African people have been colonized and therefore they are victims, that's the message that kind of keeps on, that's being brought back every time. So you have to enter into that victim mentality grouped with other minorities or other victims, and then you don't have the right for auto-determination. And that's something that was very confusing to me, and that I wasn't really sure how to take it. So, because I'm also Japanese, I was very conflicted with myself. On the one hand, I felt like injustice, black people. I feel like this is something that it's not right. There is social injustice. I felt it. I saw it. But on the other hand, because there is a system, and because you have this kind of left group that kind of recognize that there is a victimization, but I didn't see the trickery behind it, if you want, So I was lost. I didn't know how to find myself. I didn't know if I should be a victim or if I should be the oppressor, because, I wasn't really sure, and I was very confused. I think that's the bottom line. I was very confused. for most of my adolescence. But I did listen to a lot of rap music. I love Tupac, for example. And I was looking for black figures of success and not being able to find them and to be able to identify with those kind of figures, except for rappers or other kind of or people who died, you know, in the political struggles in the 60s during the African independence, this kind of people. There wasn't any kind of model of, you know, like a good banker, a scientist, you know, a lawyer, I don't know, around me, a black, you know, successful person in the civil society. So that was also another factor that I felt, you know, very frustrated about. And that took me, and so that's combined with my own kind of, you know, search for myself. So it was a difficult time, I would say, simply, you know. It was a difficult time. So yeah, so again, just to kind of summarize what I said, in Switzerland I never experienced explicit racism, but I did find implicit racism, right? And this is what I felt. And because it was implicit, you couldn't really kind of point it out. And you just feel the frustration. You know, you feel like some people may be looking down on you, but you're not really sure if that's you or if it's them, or so it's very difficult. And that was, you know, very frustrating, right? Now in Japan though, I actually neither found implicit racism or explicit racism. There might be, of course, individual cases, like in any country, but generally speaking, there isn't a burden of colonization and stuff like that. So, you know, except people who have seen in the media that, you know, black have been victims, and then they kind of emulate that thought and try to, you know, kind of put it for themselves. There isn't actually any kind of actual racism, at least, you know, for people like me. So in terms of that, I feel very comfortable here. I feel safe and comfortable, and I feel like if I have a problem, I could kind of defend myself properly. So yeah, that's what I feel here, basically. I think that, you know, nowadays, actually even now, you know, because of the George Floyd situation, there is a lot of, you know, movement. Black Lives Matter movement, for example, in Switzerland also took place. People are becoming outspoken. Black people from Switzerland who were, you know, second generations, for example, are speaking up. And I think that's very healthy, you know. You have to point out cases of racism so that racist people cannot get away with this kind of thing. It's a time we have to speak up, you know. And I think that's, in terms of that's one thing that we can do. And secondly, and most importantly maybe, education. You know, you cannot, you know, put your failures and project that to society. You know, you have to take responsibility for yourself. You have to educate yourself. And if you can educate yourself, of course it depends on where you grow up, and I'm not speaking for everyone, but at least for the ones who have the opportunity to study or to learn a craft or something, that's where they need to really kind of focus and build on that. And it is more difficult when you feel everyday implicit racism, like I mentioned, and you feel insecure because of that. It's difficult to focus, but that's where you have to what you have to do. And the more you are educated, the more you learn skills, and the more you can find, you know, stronger position in society. That's where you can really influence the world and change the world and change that image as well. It's, at the end of the day, it's a marketing thing, man. You know, you can change the brand of being black. You know, being black could be something beautiful, could be synonym of strength, resilience. After all the slavery, the colonization, everything that these people have been through, and still being here alive today, it can be seen as something like heroic, like beautiful, you know, instead of being seen as a victims and this and that, right? So it's a branding issue, and I think that, you know, to be able to kind of really influence and change the world, you need to have people at the right positions, right, of power. But to do that, you first need to have education. That should be the top priority for any black people around the world. For me, that's the key. In essence, yes, of course, all lives matter. That's not the problem. I think the main thing that this movement is trying to point out is that black people specifically have been targeted of racism, especially in the United States. And that's a very big problem. And you know, 60 years after the Luther King movement and the civil rights movement, it's not acceptable anymore. And that's what they're trying to fight, so systemic racism. And I think that's a different topic from saying all lives matter. It's a different thing. So the branding or the name could be changed, yes, but it doesn't take away the problem. The problem is there is racism against black people, and that needs to be changed, full stop. Of course, being positive is important, you know, but you have to also understand that it's not only about, you know, being positive is one thing, mental sickness is another thing, right? If you grew up in constant pressure, whether coming from your family or whether it comes from outside society, implicit racism, constant challenges, especially when you grew up and you still don't realize many things about yourself and the world, that can create actual, you know, psychological damages, right? And sometimes it's not diagnosed properly. So I think that's important first for people who have had challenging lives, especially people maybe from minority backgrounds, growing up in Western countries that understand what we are talking about here. First, I think they need to understand that on a mental level, they are okay, they are sane, right? And I would start by, you know, fixing that problem. If you need therapy, do therapy. If you need meditation, do meditation. Do what's good for you, but fix that part first, because that's what's gonna, you know, impact your whole life. And if you can kind of find your internal balance, then you can really kind of tackle, you know, the outside challenges, lack of skill set, you know, I don't know, maybe work on things that, you know, you feel have been your weaknesses. You can work on all those things, but I think the first thing is to be able to identify, you know, your own mental state, and also to, yes, stay positive, of course, but resilience, grit. You know, you have to be strong, man. And that's why I think when I say be strong, that's a moral statement. That's not what I mean, but you have to understand that, you know, although everything is dark right now, if you keep on going straight, at some point you're gonna see the end of the tunnel, you know. And personally, it took me many years. I'm 36 now, and only now I can finally say that, you know, this is a time where I feel confident, I feel in charge of my life, and it's not something that I could have said 15 years ago, 10 years ago even, you know. So it took tremendous effort, time, reflection, self-reflection, outside skill matching, you know, and all that kind of things. So yeah, I think there's 3 angles to work on: psychological, intellectual, physical. You know, if you can work on those 3 things, you should be okay, man. Get out of the comfort zone when you are ready, because if you go too quickly, there's a reason why you're not comfortable with some things, you know. So maybe first understand why you're not that comfortable, and then, you know, if it's a reasoning, or it's a reason that's not really that doesn't have a strong, you know, reason of being there, then you can kind of break that and go out. But if there's actual reasons, you know, like family connection, family that needs to be taken care of, you know, personal level of lack of confidence, that's actually, if you're gonna do it, maybe that's gonna break you even more. I don't know, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, you can think about. And I would make a thorough analysis of why I'm not comfortable. And if the pros are, you know, or the cons are bigger, then, you know, the solution will change. So that's what I would say. My favorite dish is injera. That's Ethiopian food. I wake up, I go to the gym, you know, I study a little bit. I'm taking some lessons now. But every time I kind of overcome some kind of challenge, and I do my job, you know, even though it's difficult, then I'm happy, you know, I feel satisfied. Of course, it's not every day. Sometimes I'm very lazy. Sometimes I don't do my job properly. Then I don't feel that good. But usually when I do my job, I'm happy. So I think, what changed for me, and that is still changing now, is that first I was thinking that the world was beating me down. Everything comes from outside. I'm already weakened because I didn't have the maybe proper support at the time. And socially, my people like me are not being represented enough. So, my chances or my group of friends or whatever, I don't have much strength socially at the time, at least, or in Switzerland. And because of my own kind of self mentality as well, I was feeling like everything is kind of beating me down and I need a breather, but I don't know how to get it. So, but now things changed in a sense that, now it's the opposite. It's like every time you feel a setback or something that's beating you down, you have to use it to become better, stronger. It's an opportunity to increase your capability and improve. And that's the way I take it now, man. So for me now, when I feel a stressful situation, when I feel a challenge, I feel like, okay, that's a great opportunity to test what kind of man I am. Can I grow out of it? It's a challenge, it's a risk, it's something that, it's gonna test me. And I take it as it is. So I would say that, but changing is very difficult and takes some time, So you have to kind of find something that you really like, a good figure, a mentor, a parent or a friend that has a very positive impact, positive figure that you can really kind of hold on, and that during the tough times. And when you have that figure that's helping you, you can put your head down, focus on what you need to do at that specific time, although you may feel implicit racism, implicit this or that, and really focus on what you need to do to get out of that current predicament and finally reach something better. But at the same time, you need to kind of have that faith and that positive mentality, I think, as well, right? So that's what I feel like, basically.